Howdy. Alright, so it's been a while since I've done one of these tutorial thingies for modding, but I figure that I should probably show off the plugin feature for management of the world, or MotW, or whatever the shit you want to call it. Anyway, so I recently added a random event engine to MotW, and I hard-coded the events because I figured you could do more with them that way. But I didn't like the idea that users couldn't add their own events, so I wanted to kind of come up with a way that allowed me to continue to keep the events that I created hard-coded so that they could do more things than if I just made a stupid little script or something like that. But also allowed it to be modular so that anyone who wanted to create events or whatever for it could do so. So I created a plugin engine that allows you to write your own code in just in a Visual Studio and have that parsed and ran by the modpack DLL file that I provide for you when you run MotW. So let's kind of show you how to set this up here. So you just want to create a new plugin or just a new DLL file, new project in your Visual Studio window here. And you're going to want class library just like any other mod for FirePro. You give it a name, hit OK. I already got one created, so I'm not going to do that. And then just like any other mod for FirePro, you want to go into Properties and change it to .NET Framework 2.0. That's because that is the framework that Spike decided to build FirePro on. So if you do a higher framework, it will work, but it will break everyone else's mods. So you don't want to be an asshole and do that, so you go ahead and change that and save it. And if you actually change it, it will bring up a little pop-up that says that you need to save and reload the file, and it will do it automatically for you. Just hit yes, it'll do its thing, and then it will be in the proper framework. So once that's done, you can go ahead and close that. That's the only thing you need to do in there. Then you need to go to References, and there's going to be a whole bunch of garbage ones that'll have a little like exclamation point over them. You go ahead and delete those, and you're going to want to add modpack and Unity Engine for sure. You can load the PWGR framework if you think that you're going to want to write your own hooks in this, but it is not necessary to write hooks. The modpack, the MotW itself, the plugin engine will take care of loading it at the proper time and everything. So you don't actually need to write any hooks for this. It will just do what it needs to do without having to mess with any of that. So the second thing you're going to want to do after you load in your modpack and Unity Engine references is go up here and add some usings. I added these three, which are, I actually added four. I added system.windows.forms as well because it is required for you to pop up a message box, and I like popping up message boxes to communicate with the user because the default UI in FirePro is garbage, and it would be a gigantic pain in the ass to pop up dialog boxes actually in-game. So I tend to use the Windows WinForms message box. So you may also want to add that to your references, and that's actually going to be in a different spot. Let me show you here. So up here in Assemblies, that's where you're going to load system.windows.forms. And down here in Browse, and that's where you're going to load the Unity Engine and modpack.dll. And if they're not in your list, you just go to Browse and select them from a file box that will pop up. So yeah, add all three of those, and then add these to usings. You got using system.windows.forms, using Unity Engine, using MotW, and using modpack. And that will get you everything that you're going to need to start out with. The next thing you need to do is that when you start up a thingy, you'll have a thing called namespace, and it'll have some name here, like, whatever. It'll be whatever you called your project. Delete it. Get rid of it. You want everything in the default namespace, the global namespace. So just delete the namespace. Then what you're going to want to do is you create a new public class. It doesn't need to be static. It can just be just a regular public class. Event plugin is what you need to name the class. This will be what the plugin engine looks for to run the initial code. You can have other classes, you can have other methods, but you absolutely have to have a class called event plugin, and within that class you need to have a public static bool do event method. So once you've got those two things, in the do event method, that's where you're going to write a majority of your code, because that's what's going to be fired when the MotW plugin engine queries your DLL file. So what you're going to want to do is, I created a little thing because you may not want a random event every time. Every time we go into your module, because when the plugin engine is set up so that when your event or your module returns true, it stops searching other modules, so that you don't get a torrent of events all happening at once. So it basically will only allow one event to happen at a time, which is better than just, like I said, if you didn't have this sort of check that allowed it to return false, or that stopped it from loading a bunch of events. What could eventually happen is you end up with, let's say, 4 other people write modules for some reason, and then I write 3 other ones for whatever reason. Then you have 7 modules, and if you didn't have the ability to stop them from loading, you would end up with 7 events, and you may not want 7 events. So what I did here is you create just a random check, and this one will actually never return false because it's a test one. But you're just going to want to do unityengine.random.range, and I did 0 through 100, which will return a number between 0 and 99. So I said if that number is greater than 100, then you return false. But since it can never be greater than 100, it will never return false in this instance. But normally you would put a number there, like, let's say, if the number that range generates is greater than, let's say, 30. Then it would return false. And so then you would have a 30% chance of an event from your module happening. But like I said, for the purpose of testing, we're going to do 100, which will never happen. So this will always return true because that's the other return statement. So then, after you've set up a catch so that your module can return false, so that you're courteous to other users, you're going to want to set up your events. And there literally is no, because I'm not using a scripting engine, there is no actual limitation on what you can or cannot do here. So there were some ridiculous ones on the I'm blanking on the name of what the Discord. There were some ridiculous ones on Discord, so let's pick, I don't know, we'll say 4 of those ridiculous ones, and we'll make sort of a joke event module. So let's go here, and we'll go like this. We'll go int, that stands for integer, random index equals, we'll use another random call here. And we said we're going to pick 4 of those, so we need this to go to 5 because it won't return, random range won't return the max number, like the max value. It will return one less than that. So you always, if you want 4, you need to say 5, because the max value is exclusive. So now that we have that, we want to go, I'm going to do a switch because it's easier than doing a bunch of if statements. So we're going to switch for the rand index, and we're going to have cases that go 0, case 1, case 2, case 3, and case 4. And then it's always good to include a default case in case something strange happens and it returns a number that isn't in that. It should never ever happen, but it's just sort of error catching, I guess. And then every case needs a break statement. I add them before I add any code so I don't forget. Because if you don't add a break statement, it will fall through, and you don't want it to fall through. So now you've got your little random event table. So let's say the rand index returns 0. And I'll go pick one off of the Josh the Jersey Boy suggested that the wrestler gets stabbed by Nick Gage. So now you're going to need a way to select a wrestler. The easiest way to do that in this is by using that MotW namespace, and you should be able to access promotion menu form .active promotion .get random wrestler or get random worker or get wrestlers. We're going to use get random worker, which will return a string for the worker's name. That's all it'll return. So you can still do a lot with that, which I'll show you here. We're also gonna create and add an injury to this. So that will, you'll see how you can work with this stuff. So what you're going to want to do here is, let's say you're going to need to set that won't do anything. So string victim equals. So there we go. Now we've got a string. The string is named victim. So now you're going to want to display that to the user. So we got a message box.show, and then we use victim plus has been stabbed by Nick Gage plus if you want a new line in a message box, you need to do environment.newLine plus I guess you could also use escape commands. I don't like them, but if you know your C# escape commands, you can use them. I don't know why I don't like them. It just makes my strings look messy to me, so I'd rather use the pluses and the extra code. Anyway, so now we got doctors are saying plus victim plus will be out of action for, let's say, 6 weeks or 6 cards. Everything is measured in cards in MotW, so that's what you're going to want to do. And then you're going to want to give the message box a title. That's going to be the thing that is up at the top, like the form title. So we'll call it Wrestler Stabbed. And then you're going to want message box buttons. You just need OK. You can add other ones if you want them. I'm not going to teach you how to capture button clicks or anything, though, so if you don't know how to work them, all the OK button does is close the window or close the message box, so that's what you're going to want. So now you have a way to display that the victim was stabbed by Nick Gage. The second thing you're going to want to do is set up an injury, because this is sort of an injury angle or an injury random event. So you've got injury data, which is also from that MotW namespace, and we'll call this stabbing inj equals new injury data. And the injury data has 2 constructors. One is name, injured part, injury type, and part strength. That's used only when the injury data is caused by a critical in a match. So you're going to want this second one, which needs a name, an injury level, an injured part, the description of the injury, which is called part name, and the amount of cards that they are out. So we'll go ahead and put that in. We got victim is his name. Injury level. Injury level. And then you're going to do dot, and it will bring up a list. And let's say that being stabbed by Nick Gage is a major injury. Injured part. Let's say he got stabbed in the body. And then you're going to want the description, which is going to be victim of stabbing. And then you're going to need the cards out, and we said that he was going to be out for 6 cards, so we just put a 6 there. And so now we have our new injury data. Now we just need to insert that into the list of injuries. So to do that, you call injury system. Oh shit, it's not, I forgot to make it public. I'll do that before I release this. So this is going to have a line under it, and it's not going to compile until I fix this. But to do that, you would go injury system dot injury data, and injury data is with a small I, dot add, and then you go stabbing.inj. And see, that's going to add your stabbing to the injury data. And that will allow the MotW to understand what's going on and not allow that wrestler to be booked, and give any if it's not a if it's a minor injury or less, or a medium injury or less, they will still be able to be booked, but it will confer health debuffs and stuff to them based on the injury. So yeah, all you got to do to get that to work is add it to injury system.injury data. And so that shows you, you can do a lot with this already. Let's say the second one is that a wrestler got too fat eating too much Olive Garden, which was another silly one from the from the thingy, or from the Discord. So let's add that. So we need another string, and we're going to call this string obese guy equals promotion menu form dot active promotion dot get random worker again. You know what? Let's actually use the other method for this, just so I can show you how to do it. So we're going to pick from a list of wrestlers, basically. So you're going to need to do list of ID pair, and then name the list possible workers equals promotion menu form dot active promotion dot get wrestlers. And that, let's see, what's this telling me? Oh, okay, so we need to do, I know the problem. You need to actually specify that this is MotW.ID pair. Otherwise it will try to use the modpack.id pair, which is slightly different. Okay, so there we go. And that will get you a list of wrestlers currently employed by your promotion. So then we will say that ID pair obese guy equals possible workers dot, oh, nope, possible workers bracket unity engine dot random dot range and 0 through possible workers dot count. Now the other thing you're going to want to do, so I always forget this until afterwards, I always do this, you're going to want to check to make sure that possible workers has at least one entry, and if it doesn't, you're just going to want to return. So you go if possible, it helps if I spell things right, workers dot count is less than 1, return false. So there we go. That is also ambiguous, MotW.ID pair. We can also fix this by removing modpack, but we'll leave it in just in case we need it. All right, so now we've got our obese guy. And if you check the ID pair, it just has his wrestler ID as an integer and his name. That's all an ID pair is. So we can use that to display the message box, just like we did before, messagebox.show, and we got obese guy.name plus has gained too much weight to adequately wrestle due to frequent trips to Olive Garden. Cultivating mass, because I like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so that's what we'll call this event. And again, we only need the OK button, so there we go. And so for this one, let's add a debuff to this, because we don't really, it's not an injury, it's more of a, he has less spirit or less health because of this. So we need debuff data, and we'll call this fat debuff equals new buff debuff data. And the buff debuff data does not have a constructor, so you'll have to add it separately. So we called that one fat buff debuff data. So now we need to set the parameters for that. So what we have here is the name, and that's going to be the obese guy.name. And then we have fat debuff bonus equals, and then when you type in bonus type dot, you'll get a list of all of the different bonus types that you can do. Right now we have buff both, debuff both, HP debuff, spirit debuff, and ukemi. So I'll kind of go through what all of those do. The buff both buffs both HP, hit points, and spirit when the wrestler triggers ukemi. The debuff both debuffs both health and spirit at the beginning of a match. HP gives a static number of health points back when a wrestler activates ukemi. HP debuff only debuffs your health at the beginning of a match. Spirit gives a static number of spirit points back when the wrestler uses ukemi on top of whatever they get from using the ukemi. And spirit debuff gives a debuff to spirit at the beginning of a match. Ukemi gives a static amount of ukemi points at the beginning of a match, so the wrestler can start with a bigger bonus, or so they will, when they earn ukemi points, it earns on top of this already banked amount. So it just makes their comeback bigger. So we're going to say that this debuffs both health and spirit at the beginning of a match because they're fat. So then we need fat debuff dot F modifier, and this is going to be how much of a debuff it is. I want to say that they only have 80% of their normal health and spirit, so we need 0.8 F. And so what that's going to do is at the beginning of the match, it's going to multiply the wrestler's health and spirit, which should be at the default value, and it's going to multiply it by 0.8 and then set the value to that. So it'll be 80% of whatever it started with. You cannot go above 1, because if you set it above 1, what will end up happening is it will send it past the maximum value, because all wrestlers start at the maximum value. And so what will happen is the second that the wrestler is initiated or initialized in the code, it will just set it back to the maximum value. So you cannot use a value greater than 1 here. That's why you can only debuff a guy at the start of the match. So fat debuff, and then we got the I modifier, which is the integer modifier. That's going to be 0, because this particular debuff, the debuff both, and the debuff, the health debuff and the spirit debuff only use the F modifier, and the 3 buffs only use the I modifier. So keep that in mind when creating these. You can always ask me in the Discord, and I can help you out with this if you don't remember, but it's a good thing to keep in mind all of these things. So the other thing that we need for this, because they all have 5 properties that you need to set, is count. And that's going to be how many matches or how many times this is going to trigger. So we'll set this for, I don't know, we'll set this for 10 matches. After 10 matches, he's used to his new weight, and it no longer brings him down or taxes his health. And so then now we need to add this to the buffs. So we're going to go to promotion menu form.active promotion.buffs.add, and then we got fat debuff. And buffs holds both buffs and debuffs. So don't worry, there is no debuffs or anything. You just add it to buffs, and that will work. So that will basically create an event where a wrestler visits Olive Garden too often, gets real fat, and then has an 80% debuff to both spirit and health at the beginning of a match for 10 matches. So let's see what some of the other stupid ones were. Let's see. Trying to find it. I'm not creative enough to think of my own right now, so. Here we go. Here's some from View. Ran afoul of the mob, stabbed in a bar. So there is a. Let's say that there is. You only want to get certain, like wrestlers with a certain trait in the personality system. Well, you can do that by querying through the active promotions wrestler personality info. And to do that, you go for each wrestler personality WP in promotion menu form.active promotion.wrestler personality info. This will allow you to check each thing. So you can go if WP dot name, or no, not dot name, if WP dot gambling and random event manager dot still employed, and then you go wp.name, and that will make sure it's somebody who actually works for you and not just a random, because the wrestler personality info property actually contains all of the wrestlers, all of your data for every wrestler, even if they don't work for your promotion. That way it doesn't change so it generates them all as it notices that edit and stores it. So they're all static after they're generated. That way, because otherwise, it could change in between playthroughs as you move guys in and out of your promotion. And I figured that was not. I don't like that. I like it to be static as they're discovered. So it stores everything. So that's why you still need to check for still employed, which will make sure that it's a wrestler that is in your promotion. So there we go. So now we've got. We know that the wrestler is a gambler and is employed by your promotion. So now we can access, or we can do the event for that thing. So let's go messagebox.show wp.name plus ran afoul of the mob and was stabbed in a bar due to a loan dispute. And then we want comma. We got to give this a name, and we'll call this Ricky Dozand. Except that he wasn't stabbed for owing money, but you get the idea. Doesn't need to be accurate. Alright, so there is no death injury in MotW. I thought that would be, I don't know, I just felt like it was a little much, a little overkill. However, you can still permanently remove wrestlers from being accessible by setting them as retired. and I'll show you how to do that. We'll say that this totally removes a guy. So we want to set up a new injury because retirements are technically injuries. Basically, anything that removes a wrestler from being accessible is technically injury data. So even things like rehab or jail, I have set up as injury data. I know that that might be a little confusing, name-wise, but it makes sense. There's no reason to set up jail data and retirement data and all of it if they use the same properties and do the same thing. So we got injury data. Here's another stabbed guy. So we'll go mob victim. I got to give all. That's the problem with a switch statement, is that I got to give them all separate names because it remembers the stuff from the other cases. So we'll call this mob victim, and we got to set up another injury data. So we'll go wp.name. Oh shit! What am I doing? Mob victim equals new injury data. That's why it was all messed up. Now we do wp.name. Now we do the injury level. So we go injury level dot, and we're going to find retired or retirement. Then you're going to do the injured part. I'm just going to set it to none since retirement doesn't matter which part is injured, he's retired. And then you need the cards out. And so to remove a wrestler permanently and disable the ability for them to come back in the one night only, the one night event type thing that I have set up, you need to set it to 2001. It's a special card amount that basically means do not, like this guy is out permanently, do not subtract. Oh shit, I forgot to set up a name. We'll call him retired due to stabbing. And yeah, so 2001 is a special value that tells the injury system not to subtract amounts from it, so it will never expire, and it will never... 2001 as opposed to 1001 makes them ineligible for one-night-only events or one-night-only returns. So the stabbing guy, he's not coming back. So now that we have that set up, we just need to add it to the injury system's injury data. So you go injury system, and remember, I'm not going to be able to access this. You guys will. This is going to have the injury data.add, and then we want mob victim. And so yeah, that's what you're going to want there. And like I said, remember that looks like an error for me, and this isn't going to compile until I fix it, and I will fix it. I will pause the recording and fix it for you. And then I'll show you how this all works after I get this all typed out. So now that that's added, since we're in a for each, we want to break. And that will take you out of the for each loop. Otherwise, this would just go, after this, it would just go on to the next wrestler personality and check it for gambling and see if he was employed, and then do the exact same thing to him. Since you don't want that, you got to break out of the for each loop. So the next one, let's see, I think View posted a couple of them. Lefty Lanky said, quit the business to get into competitive pumpkin growing. So we'll use that one. And for this one, I'm just going to use get random worker. So we need a string pumpkin grower equals promotion menu form dot active promotion dot get random worker. And then we're going to need the message box to let the user know what's going on. And then so now we go pumpkin grower plus has left the business to become a competitive pumpkin grower. And then we've got found calling. We'll call that event .ok. So now we need to set another injury because remember, retirements are injuries. I'm just going to go up here and copy this because it's almost exactly the same. Obviously, we're going to have to change the name to Pumpkin Guy or Pumpkin INJ, just to be more obvious with what this is. And we'll change this to Pumpkin INJ. And then the other thing you're going to want to do, you've got to change the WP.name. If you cut and pasted, you're going to need to change that to Pumpkin Grower. And you're going to need to change the cards out. And so this guy's eligible to come back. Let's say he's growing pumpkins, everything's going good, but he gets a wild hair up his ass. He wants to come back for a night. So change that from 2001 to 1001, and that will make his retirement permanent, except in rare cases where he becomes eligible for a one-night event sort of return. And then you add that to the injury system, just like we did up here, and that's that. So now this is the last one. And let's add one where they go to jail. So Takwan said to just look for old observers about late-stage WCW events. Flips out on PCP in the hotel lobby. So that's one that we'll use. So we have a drugs wrestler personality trait, so we're going to use that again. So what we're going to want to do, and this time I'm just going to show you how to do it without looping through everything. So, or you'll still loop through everything, but it'll just return a value, and then that way you don't have to write the whole thing in the for each loop. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go wrestler personality. We'll call this addict, and we'll just, it equals null because we're going to set it with this loop. And then you go for each wrestler personality, WP in promotion menu form dot active promotion dot wrestler personality info, and you're going to loop through here with if WP dot drugs and random event manager dot still employed WP dot name. That way it's still somebody who works for you. Addict equals WP break. And then you just come out of the loop, and now you can write your code down here, and you're already broken out of the loop. It won't loop. So if you forget to break this one, all it will do is find the next guy who is true for drugs and true for working to you, and it will set addict to that. So essentially, addict, if you forget to break the loop, addict will be the last guy who has that those traits. If you break the loop, it'll always be the first guy. What you'd ideally want to do is set up a list, add guys to the list, and then randomly select from the list, which I can show you how to do some other time, or you can figure out how to do on your own. I'm just going for simple here. So here is the PCP flip out thing. So we need a message box that lets the user know what's going on. So now we've got addict.name plus flipped out after taking PCP in, or flipped out in the hotel lobby after using large quantities of PCP. And now we give the event a name. We'll call this drug-addled freakout. And then we're going to want to add buttons. Okay, that's the only button you need. Then, okay, so let's expand this a little bit since we said we were going to send them to jail. So now we need plus environment dot new line plus addict.name again plus was arrested and has been sentenced to serve, let's say, you can also do things like random, and I did this in all of my random events. I randomized the amount of time that a wrestler was out, but like I said, I'm going for simplicity here, so let's say that they're sentenced to serve 5 cards worth of jail time. So now we've got that. So now we're going to want to set up the injury. So you do another injury data, since remember, injury data contain all reasons that a wrestler is going to be out, including jail time. So we'll call this jail INJ equals new injury data. And then we've got addict.name as the name for the injury data. Injury level dot, and he's in jail. And then we're going to do injured part, and this is going to be none because it's just not an injured part, it's just jail. Then we need the description string, incarcerated after PCP freakout. And then we need the number of cards that he's going to be out. And we said it's 5, so we go ahead and set that. And then we do injury system. Oh yeah, it's not going to be there. Dot injury data dot add, and then we'll go jail INJ. So now let me fix this. I'm bringing up this is the code for the mod pack. I'm going to go fix that injury data thing. We go to MotW, we go to injury data, injury system, and this is a public class. Then we save, we build, we go debug, we move modpack.dll back over to here, we go boom. Then that should be that. And then we can go back here. We can go project. We build here. And see, just me changing that to a public class made injury system accessible so that I can add and build now. So now we basically have everything. You don't actually need to put anything in that default case. It just needs to exist in case an error happens with the generation and it generates a number it shouldn't, which should literally never happen, but better safe than sorry. But that will just break the switch statement, and then here is where you always want to return true here, because this basically says if any of these events happen, then return true and stop querying mods for the other plugins and the default system for other events, because all of the plugins are queried before the default events are queried. And since, like I said, this will never return false, it will always do an event from this thing right now. So let's show you how this works. So we go ahead and build it, then we go here and we go to test plugin for MotW, because that's what I called my program. We go test program or test plugin for MotW, and we are going to copy this to my, not the manage directory like a regular mod. It goes in MotW and plugins, which is a new directory for most of you. It won't exist. You'll have to create it. But that's where it goes. And then we go ahead and run FirePro. I don't need to repatch because I didn't do any changes to anything important. You don't need to repatch for these plugins. They're loaded separately from the PWGR. So all you need to do is put them in that plugin folder. They are not hot swappable. So if you put them in there after the game loads, it won't work. But if you put them in there before the game loads and load the game, it will load them all and it will allow them all to be queried at that point. So that's what you have to do. You've got to put them in there before you start the game. If you want to add new ones, you need to you'll need to start the game again after adding them. You can't change them on the fly. So we'll let my my game load up here. There we go. Let's make sure it doesn't need to cache anything. It does not. I use my testing edits thing for all of these. You can see I've run a bunch of test cards here. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, since the random event fires at the end of every card, provided it passes a random event check and this promotion, the event chance is set to 100, so it will always run an event. We need to go ahead and add a card and run it all the way through. So we'll do this. Which number is this, since they're all in order? Test 30. Test 30, add match. Let's add Luchador versus the Crypt Keeper, auto name. I don't need to change anything because this is just to show you that it works. We select this, we go to run match. This will do its thing. It will load the match. I'm going to super speed through this. This is going to be really loud. I'm going to turn that way, way down. Anyway, so let's super speed through this. There we go. That is done. There's a random event. That actually came from my thing. So for whatever reason, this did not load the events. Oh, that fucking irritates me. What the hell? Here I am trying to make a video and it didn't load the events. That's a problem on my end, not a problem on... I'm still working on this plugin system, so... But anyway, that basically shows you how to write your own events. If I decide to extend this to anything else, I will go ahead and let you know. And I'll do another tutorial for how to extend it. Like if you wanted to add your own buffs and debuffs or something, I may allow for that at some point. But right now it only works for random events. Anywho, so that's pretty much it. And I'm going to work on getting this to load up properly. And if I do, I will go ahead and let y'all... Alright, so I fixed the issue here, and this should work unless I mess something else up. So let's try it. If I mess something else up, you'll never see this video. So now we gotta run this match. We're gonna want to super speed it here. Okay. Now, the pop-up is from Nick Gage. Testerson, poor Testerson, has been stabbed by Nick Gage. Doctors are saying Testerson will be out of action for 6 cards. So, that's how it works. So, now, if you look here, you see that Testerson, he's got a broken leg, and then Nick Gage stabbed him. So... that's kind of shitty of Nick Gage, stabbing a guy with a broken leg. But yeah, so that's how it works. You can do things like check for already injured guys. You can do things... I mean, shit, you could write your own database for wrestler personalities, just like I did, and check against that, and have it save every time. You know, you could do a lot with this plugin system. It just depends on how far you want to go with it, and how much time you want to invest in setting it up, and you know, and obviously your experience with programming. The more basic you are, the more basic your plugin would have to be. I will eventually, probably shortly after this video, I will make a really basic template for everything that people can use just to kind of get themselves started. They'll be able to copy and paste things. That way they can it just becomes easier for them to make events without having to be too, too program heavy. But yeah, that's pretty much how this works. Like I said, you can get very into it, creating new wrestler personality traits and checking against those. You could create all sorts of things if you wanted to. Anyway, so that's that, and that's how it works. So, all right, I'm going to go splice these two videos together now and upload them to YouTube.